Section 3.2, challenge activity 3.2.1, residual plots. Remember, residual plots are a way for us to analyze the differences between the actual data and the regression line. When you have a residual plot that looks totally random and that's your best bet, that tells you that the linear regression is appropriate. However, when the regression plot does show some patterns, it can point that maybe even though we saw a really good linear pattern in the scatter plot, the residual plot pattern may say that we can't use linear regression. So we'll dive a little deeper in that into these in part 2. For part 1 here, we have for a linear regression modeling how the selling price of a house is affected by the number of bedrooms in the house. The residuals are defined as, remember, the residuals are the difference between the actual and the predicted. And that's with regard to the y variable. We're not predicting the x variable. So in this case, our y is the selling price because we're saying it's affected by. That means that x is the predictor, is our number of bedrooms, and the selling price is our y. So here we need to look at the actual selling price versus the selling price predicted by the regression line. We're not looking at other modeling methods. We're comparing our actuals, the actual data points versus the regression line prediction. Check, that's expected. Nice little green check. Next, so now we're looking at the residual plots. For each residual plot below, determine whether a linear model is appropriate, and if not, why. So I'm going to tell you right now, just looking at these, this is the only one that's appropriate. Do you see how there's a constant, like it stays in between these two bounds, -10 to 10. It's pretty filled out throughout that period. There does not appear to be any discernible pattern. So I'm going to say here, this one's appropriate. Here, one thing I notice is the residuals are very small here and they tend to get bigger, almost like a cone shape. That means that our variance isn't staying constant. So it's not appropriate because it fails the constant variance assumption. Now down here, we seem to have some kind of like a U-shaped pattern. So we know it's not appropriate. Let's see what our options are. It's not appropriate because it's the constant variance, it fails the constant variance assumptions. That's not the case. That's more what we saw up here. There's more of an actual U-shaped pattern. So that means it fails the mean of 0 assumption. Let's click that and check. Nice little green check mark. So that's a little bit more about residual plots. If you have any questions about that or anything else, let me know.